Moscow, the largest city about 30 kilometers in diameter in Russia, is located in the west part of the country along the Moskva River, from which the name of the city is thought to be derived. With more than 12 million inhabitants, it is the most populous and the largest city on the entire European continent. This time-honored city was first mentioned in 1147. It is one of the oldest Russian cities. Moscow has earned a few nicknames as time goes by. The name White Stone was given to highlight the architecture image of medieval Moscow built of white stone, including the Kremlin wall of the 14th centuries. Meanwhile, the reason why Moscow is also called the First Throne is that it was the first city which became the center of all united Russian lands, and later the capital of all Russia. Playing many vital roles, Moscow is the heart of Russia. Apart from being the capital, the city has served as the major political, economic, cultural, and scientific center of the country and even Europe. In Europe, Moscow has one of the largest municipal economies, and it contributes 1/5 of Russia's gross domestic product. In the past, it has even been developed to be one of the fastest growing tourist destinations in the world. Moscow is an environmental city as well, having over 40% green covered areas within its territory and the largest forest in urban area within its border. The city is one of the greenest capitals in Europe and the world. For each person in Moscow, there are about 16 square meters of greenery, which is double and even triple of any other major cities.
Moscow is an old city immersed with strong and unique Russian culture, and its architecture is one of the most obvious examples to demonstrate the cultural elements of the city. The architecture of Moscow follows the Russian distinctive construction style. When discussing Moscow architectural design, we will never miss to talk about the vivid colors of their buildings. Much architecture in Moscow is filled with lively colors, even for their official facilities like the Moscow Kremlin. It also contains buildings with bright colors within the complex, which is very different from the usual design of governmental facilities that emphasize on promoting authority of the nation. The Kremlin is a fortified complex of the heart of Moscow, which consists of 5 palaces, 4 cathedrals, and the enclosing Kremlin wall with Kremlin towers. It was formerly the Tsar's Moscow residence. Now, the complex acts as an official residence of the President of the Russian Federation. It is also one of the most representative architecture of Moscow, deeply immersing with the classic Moscow architectural design. Take the St. Basil Cathedral that is enclosed in the complex as an example. The church is most notable for its vibrant colors throughout both the interior and exterior of the church. Originally, the design of the cathedral followed the depiction of the heavenly city in the Book of Revelation, and the exterior was painted white, and most of the tin domes were layered with gold. However, due to the rise of icons and mural arts in the 16,000s, many artists had access to more colorful palettes of paints and dyes and began favoring the use of brighter colors. As a result, each of the 9 onion domes was painted a different color, and many pieces of metal were bent and placed on the top of the domes to create colorful artistic patterns. Meanwhile, the interior of the church also followed the trend and applied more vivid colors in the design. The floral patterns on the wall, the mural of icon paintings, and gold-layered doors contribute to colorful masterpieces within the interiors of the church. With its colorful interior design and exterior onion domes, Many described St. Basil Cathedral as a church like no other Russian building. Nothing similar can be found in the entire millennium of Byzantine tradition from the 5th to the 15th century. From such comment, we would easily find that using lively colors when designing building is common among all Moscow architecture. Besides the St. Basil's cathedrals, it is not difficult to find buildings with vivid colors in Moscow. The Red Square is another demonstration of the usage of vibrant color in Moscow architecture. It separates the Kremlin, the former royal synagogue, and now the official residence of President of Russia, and it is often considered the central square of Moscow, since Moscow's major streets, which connect to Russia's major highways, originate from the square. From the name, we already know it is a square of red color. Red is a vivid color that usually represents passion in modern culture. Moreover, it is also a prominent color in Russian culture and history. In Russian culture, red symbolizes something beautiful, good, or honorable. Therefore, the Red Square not only demonstrates the architectural design of Moscow, but also expresses the Russian appreciation of red in the design.
In Moscow, landmarks like Cathedral of the Assumption, St. Basil's Cathedral, have a common feature: the domes. These iconic architectures are mostly introduced by the Orthodox Church. The domes were firstly imitated from the Byzantine architecture. Then, it transformed it into multi-small onion domes, which have become a Russian signature architectural style, instead of the original single huge dome like the church in Istanbul, Turkey. Practically, onion domes can also prevent snow from peeling on the roof. As a religious portent and symbol, domes are endowed with different hidden messengers related to the Orthodox Church. It has been symbolized a ladder which led the followers to God. Therefore, a cross is set up on the top of each dome. Also, domes represent the flame of hope in Russia, which are usually gold-plated or filled with some vivid colors. Besides religious signs, the domes record the history of Russia. Take a look at the St. Basil's Cathedral. 8 of the 9 domes featured on St. Basil's Cathedral represent 8 saints who helped Russia's army in the war towards Kazan. These special domes have already become the landmark of Moscow.
The first social issue in Moscow is wealth inequality. According to Global Wealth Report organized by Credit Suisse in 2016, it is found that the wealthiest 10% of people in Russia control 89% of the country's wealth, which is the highest among all countries like China and US. In 2016, Moscow has 16 billionaires and their combined net worth is around 270 billion, which rank the third in the city with the most billionaires in the world. Most of them earn their wealth through metal, oil, and banking industry, and their lives are luxurious. They are lavish with their wealth and they will buy cars, yachts, and multi-million-dollar homes. Despite having a large amount of wealthy people, poverty is serious in Moscow. A report found that 41% of Russians are struggling to have enough money for daily needs like food and clothing, and every one of 20 people in Moscow are under the subsistence level, which means Moscow suffers great economic disparity and the problem of uneven distribution is severe. Besides, the average monthly income in Moscow is around 65,000 rubles in 2017. Although it seems to be an acceptable amount of money, Russia suffers from serious inflation, and Moscow has been ranked top 20 for the most expensive city in the world. It is estimated that the monthly living expense in Moscow range from 10,000 to 20,000 rubles. So the salary of most people is not enough for their daily expense. For the elderly pension is just around 3,000 rubles, and it is definitely not enough to sustain their daily living. So it is common to see some old people standing in the street and beg for money. Comparing the situation of wealthy people and the poor, it reflects how serious the problem of wealth inequality is.
Another social issue is sexual inequality in Moscow. Women face employment discrimination and difficulty on searching for a job. Employers are unwilling to accept women. They believe family duty will hinder the work. By law, women get maternity benefit, but usually this right is being violated. Often signed contract, women are forced to guarantee absence of possible pregnancy. During certain period of time, if they become pregnant, they don't receive maternity benefit or even lose a job. In spite of the fact there are mechanisms of protection on women's rights, in such case by state labor inspections and by court, but women seldom appeal to those bodies because either they don't know their rights and are afraid of losing the job. Even if they find a job, wage discrimination on women is existing. In Moscow, most employers think the burden of family duty reduces the value of women as labor force and prefer hire workers who are ready for hard and overtime work. That means prefer males. Our research shows the equal professional skills and qualification. 23% of employers would have preferred to dismiss a woman, while only 12% in men. An analysis of job vacancy advertisement shows up to 30% of these advertisements indicate a decided gender applicants. Even for professionals or which distinguish between the two sexes is not required at all. As for women themselves, they have their own stereotype complex, which are related to how they may precede to their potential employers. This results in so-called self-discrimination, such as rethinking from applying for high-paid professional and position. In political participation, the percentage of women in the legislative and executive body in the Russian Federation is very low. Meanwhile, there is an inverse independency. The richer and the bigger region is the smaller number of women is presented in regional parliament. Only in every 10th region, there is 20% of women representation in ruling clique in the highest rank. Moreover, a quarter of all Russian Federation region, there are less than 5% of women deputies in regional parliament, or even there is no women at all.